Okay, you're an advocate for a 7-year-old with cerebral palsy. Eligibility is orthopedically impaired. Surgery, summer on both hips. Wheelchair through much of October. School is not accessible. That's the key issue. The school is not accessible. Now, I haven't seen the school, so I'm just trusting what you're writing here. Parents have been asking for accessibility issues to be addressed, the sidewalk, restroom for 2.5 years to no avail. And I can tell you, I've had cases like this in the past. And what they do is they try to kick the can until she ages out to the next school. And if the next school is newer, doesn't have the kind of accessibility issues, then what they'll do is they'll try to kick the can as much as they can so they don't have to um, make the necessary updates for her. Okay. And what I don't like about government is that the government creates little rules for itself that is different than, let's say, a private corporation, because the accessibility issues, for example, all the hotels during the Obama administration, they had added provisions within the Americans with Disabilities Act to where hotels had to have the wheelchair lifts in both the pool, indoor or outdoor, and hot tub. All right, and so that's why when you go to hotels, you see the chair lifts in every hotel. That was the mandate. And of course, all the corporations were like, "Oh, we're going to have to shut our pools down." Well, they didn't shut their pools down. They all just put in the equipment, and everybody moved on with their life. All right, that's equal access. Uh, what I don't like about government is that in situations like this, they have little rules for themselves. Depending on how old the building is, they're able to retroactively apply whatever the um, Americans with Disabilities rules were for accessibility, backdating to when that building was built, for example. Now, I'm not being very specific, and there's a lot of gray areas in there, but you get the general point, is that they're not having to follow the updated rules because they're government and they're government buildings. And so they're not treated the same way as Walmart, all right, where Walmart has to have these things regardless of how old the Walmart is. Um, and I'm not a real big fan of inequities when it comes to treating a corporation different from a government entity. Just because the government gets to make its own rules, these are the problems. And so I've had situations like this to where some of these older schools are able to get away with it. And then on top of it, if within your school system, there are alternative options to the child's home school, then if the child's home school is inaccessible, for example, but there's a neighboring school within the school system that is accessible, what they'll do is they'll do a cost analysis. And if the cost of updating the school is excessive, and that's another term that is up for interpretation, then the school can move the child to the accessible school and not have to update the homeschool. But like I said, in many instances, what they do is they go, well, the kid's only going to be here for 3 or 4 school years. And so, if they just sit there and just kick the can and kick the can and kick the can, then they can get the kid over to a newer school. Let's say the middle school is the new school or the high school is the new school. Then they don't have to sit there and make these updates. But in your situation, I've had these cases, and yes, she's qualified under orthopedically impaired, and yes, a free and appropriate public education is there. But we're also talking about educational performance areas and getting into these nuances of how the inaccessibility of, let's say, a restroom impedes the child's ability to receive a FAPE. The argument is there, but at the same time, the stronger argument is going to be through the Office of Civil Rights, but it's actually through the Americans with Disabilities Act. And there's regional centers in the U.S., and I'm trying to think. I believe the one for your area, if I know where you live, um, based upon your Facebook profile, um, I believe the regional center that serves your area is actually um, in the Memphis area, I want to say. And now I could be wrong, but you just have to sit there and Google regional centers, regional help centers for Americans with Disabilities Act. And they also have attorneys on staff. Most of the people who are attorneys on staff with offices of Americans with Disabilities um, actually have disabilities. And they're bulldogs. And as rightfully they should, because these things are very personal for them. And they are a powerful ally in this situation because they can help you as an advocate and also the family help navigate this. I don't agree with what your attorney is saying. FAPE is FAPE is FAPE. And so if you as a parent or you as an advocate do not believe what they're doing is offering a free and appropriate public education, the last thing I would do is sit there and just check a box and say, oh, that's FAPE, because it's not FAPE. And especially if what they're wanting to do with regards to the goals is in direct contradiction to medical recommendations from the PT, from the private physician, from the occupational therapist. I could care less what the school staff think, quite frankly, because I get a little bit sick and tired of going to these meetings where, and I'm not throwing PTs and OTs under the bus here, okay? Because many of them are held hostage in the same way that behavior analysts and speech language pathologists are held hostage inside of our schools, is that many of our schools employ or they subcontract, but a lot of schools employ their own OTs, PTs, SLPs, and behavior analysts. But it's not the OTs, PTs, speech language, or behavior analysts that are giving them orders. They're just administrators that are teachers that have education degrees, giving orders to people who have a different licensure, held under different ethics. And what ends up happening is that the education system teaches and preaches to our OTs and PTs and speech language pathologists and to our behavior analysts that schools aren't therapeutic settings. You know, they're education settings. And so therefore they don't provide therapy in the way that private providers do. Now, I can tell you that that is horse crap to the nth degree, okay? Because the child's disability drives the services, and our schools are therapeutic environments. That's why we have, for example, therapy rooms. Wow. Okay. That's also why we have self-contained environments. Kids can't be in a general education setting. So we create these environments that are therapeutic. I'll say it louder for those in the back. Therapeutic settings. In the world of James Galini, public school is therapy because we insulate children from the rules of the greater society. Okay, now the school does have student code of conduct. And yes, police are in school and they can enforce, the law, and some of them do, and they shouldn't do that because our schools are meant to be therapeutic environments in order to raise children in a civil society. So therefore, we tolerate a certain amount of maladaptive behavior, which in a therapeutic setting, that would be the word, behavior that's not acceptable. Okay, so crime, if you want to call it that. Because harassment's a crime. Assault's a crime. All of these things that children do to screw up, technically, a lot of them are crimes. Now, we don't treat them as such because they're in these environments that we consider therapeutic. Schools. All right? And then depending on the nature of the child's needs and disability, then we really hone those down into individualized settings where professionals with certain licensure are given those opportunities to habilitate or rehabilitate children in their educational performance areas. And that's academics, that's social emotional development, that's communication. And depending on the more rare areas of need, orthopedic. In fact, we have equipment at school, like Rifton chairs that are orthopedic in purpose, and schools have them. Now, why in the hell would you have these things if what you do inside school is not therapeutic? Okay, so that's bunk. But what should be the ruling and controlling factor are the medical recommendations from the doctor, and not superseded by the idea of an education system, and especially educators that don't have occupational therapy license, don't have PT licensure, don't have speech language pathology licensure, but yet they're dictating to these professionals what they can or what they cannot do, or bulldogging of setting a goal to remove the supports that a child needs, which then puts the child in danger, you see, puts the child at risk. And so I would never approve, if I was a parent or an advocate, a goal that is in direct contradiction. And so sometimes when a school bulldogs these kind of things, it leaves you in no other condition than to fight. And you don't have those choices. But I would go with regards to fixing the situation inside the school. I wouldn't necessarily go the due process route for IDEA. I would challenge the goal, and then you have a very strong argument with regards to not following the medical recommendations of the child's physician. And since a child spends the majority of their day inside of a school, they can't be at risk, and it can't be in contradiction to the child's private care physicians, because at that point you run the risk in the health and safety category of regression, atrophy, those kind of things. Now, if the school sits there and goes, but it was just a goal. I got that it was just a goal, or what are we talking about, a year? And, what do we do in between now and then? And if you guys have established this goal to where over the course of the school year, 1 week in, you're already taking away a walker, then I'm sorry, that's not a goal. That's an ulterior motive. And I've seen schools do that. But see, I also have a case currently to where the doctors are saying, do not put her in a wheelchair, period. We need her walking. We need her using her gait trainer. We need her, as mobile as possible. And the school denied this child access to the school, saying that if the parent did not show up to produce a wheelchair with her in it, even though it was in direct contradiction to the medical orders, that they denied her access. I had to get involved. You can't deny kids access for this, especially if it's in contradiction with the private physicians. These schools, I just don't get it. And the parent concern is legitimate, because what ends up happening? Well, the school ended up saying, well, don't worry about it. We'll let you bring her. We got our wheelchair. Well, and the parent's like, well, does that mean you're going to stick her in it all day? Well, the parent's not there. And this school has shown themselves as untrustworthy, which means that that's exactly what they were planning to do, is stick her in a wheelchair all day. Why is that? Because it's easier. See, if she was using something else, then they would have to provide staff to support her, and they didn't want to. Money. That's the reason they won't update the school. That's the reason they won't make simple changes to a bathroom. And the school is so stupid that they can't negotiate with the parent on what can work and what can be changed. Unbelievable. But that's the route I would take. I would look up the regional center that serves your area with the Americans with Disabilities Act, call their attorneys, and get some support in that area. Leave the OCR complaint open. That's going to take some time, though. Get the ADA munching on their butts, and you're going to see some differences.